All right, we back again for another episode. I'm with my man Rob Wilson. Man, how you feeling today, brother?
Good. I'm all right, man. I mean, I've been kind of lazy today, but I, kind of pulled myself together so I could be here with you. So,
Man, I'm so grateful for you being here with me, man. You got an amazing story. Obviously, man, we've known each other for a little while, and I've told you just recently, man, you can write a damn book. Just on your story, man. You an amazing dude, smart dude, just like but like many of us, like been through just like a lot of shit, man. Just like
yeah,
have seen a lot of things. Um, and I'm from my room right now. I'm in my room. I'm in Jamaica right now, just taking a break to sit down and chat with you. And I actually wouldn't rather be doing anything else right now. Like I'm glad we got to reconnect, man.
yeah. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh yeah. So yeah, man, I appreciate you being here. So and before we hit record, man, we just talking about just like obviously, just the modes that make fatherhood. And we're talking about some of the things that where we started, like what was our foundation of fatherhood? Like growing up, like what did you see as young Rob Wilson in your home of like some of the things that molded you maybe into the kind of father that you are now? Like what did you think a father was like before you had kids? When when you're first, when your lady was pregnant with your first, what were you thinking fatherhood was in your mind?
So I guess all I knew is that I wanted to be. I knew what I didn't want to do as a
Mm.
father, so I didn't like that was it, right? And so I just I wanted to be present, and so growing up, my dad passed away when I was 6 years old. I like to say my dad passed away twice because uh, when I was six, my dad had overdosed on the streets of Yonkers, New York, and his buddies tossed him out of a car, left him, and when they revived him, and then he was in a coma uh, until I was 10. My mom was didn't know, I think before the age of the internet, probably we didn't know things, didn't have medical information so available to us, and doctors told my mom to take my dad off of life support or whatever, but I guess she didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. So either way, 5 years later, she takes him off life support, and he dies again. And prior to that experience, my dad was he was not consistent,
Yeah,
to put it lightly.
yeah,
I loved my dad, and there were moments that I knew he loved me, but looking back, his he was on, you know under the influence a
yeah,
lot, and so his moods were he was irrational. And I was scared of him. He was a
yeah.
big guy, and it was scary. So,
How much do
and
you?
so
Oh, go
good.
ahead. I
I
was
don't
gonna.
know what I was.
I was gonna ask you how much you remember about that. Do you remember that pretty vividly? Like, as far as where him passing and all that. Do you have a good memory of that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I was really young, but the funny thing is that I remember being some of the more peaceful times in my
Mm,
life was right after he passed, because he brought along so much chaos
yeah.
and stuff. And so after we passed, we moved in with my grandparents, and my grandparents actually they're where that's how I developed any sort of moral compass
Mm,
or sense of values. Um, and if I think about a father or a role model for me, would have been my grandfather. Like many kids that grow up without a dad, I collected fathers along the way, role
uh,
models. I would get close to counselors or uh, in college, I started looking at some of my college professors and realizing like, oh, okay, well, that's the guy I want to be,
Yeah, yeah,
or like he seems solid and or whatever, and so I would soak up all I could from them and kind of get close to them, but
yeah,
yeah, I do have a memory of vivid memories of that time. Um, scary, but also like this sort of there was a peacefulness
yeah,
after he was gone.
yeah. I hear you, man. Like it's you mentioned some of the things that you didn't want to do. Like what were some of those things specifically that you say like, oh, I knew what I didn't want to be as a father. Can you think of like,
Well, I never wanted my kids to. I just wanted my kids to have a normal life, like what
yeah,
I considered normal.
yeah,
Um, like a nuclear family probably, and just schedules and dinners and at a certain time, and just really I didn't want to expose them to things in life that made them grow up too fast, or and I wanted, and I didn't want to be absent.
yeah,
you know I wanted to be present, and I wanted to be loving, and someone they could look up to.
yeah. Do you, do you, do you feel like that's hard to do you feel like it's hard to escape like that chaos? You know what I mean? Like as a human being, like it almost like seeps into you a little bit because like I felt like, I know you saw the episode with me and my father, and like
Right.
I spent a lot of time as a kid and a lot of energy because there was a part where I really felt like I hated him. And
Hmm.
I spent a lot of energy, and I don't know if you can relate to this, trying not to be like him.
Right.
And like whenever I felt like I was doing something that was similar to him, I was like, I would like hate it. I'm like, man, I'm not him. Like I'm even
Right.
named after my father. And they used to call my
Me too.
father they used to call my father Tony. And I hated when anybody called me Tony because I didn't want to be confused with my father. I'm like, call me Anthony. I'm Anthony, I'm not Tony. All right.
Right. Yeah, the
But
funny thing is when you're asking me what I preferred to be called, um, now I've outgrown this, but there was a time in my life where when people called me Robert,
mhm,
uh, it you know it had just sort of like a bad vibe or
mhm,
something. And honestly, I think my dad passed away when he was 29, and I waited for myself to get to that age forever, and would always, it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I wondered if I would live to be older than
mhm.
that.
Yeah. So what like but like there's like there was a lot of things that I discovered about myself where I was a lot like my father. Like I said, where you could say like that, kind of like there was things that I didn't want, but there's also part of his personality that I exhibited as well. That I was like, man, I had to almost kind of embrace and accept that this is who I am. And
Hmm.
like when I asked you, like, did you feel that too? Like you said, there was a lot of chaos. Did any of that chaos you feel like seep into you, who you were as a human being?
Yeah, and I think that I think that's what we do as human beings, is that we repeat patterns. We try to resolve trauma, and unless those things are addressed early on, we carry those things into adulthood in sort of this naive way, right? Because the expression, you can't see the forest from can't see the trees from the forest. I think that's what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the other way around. But either way, like you can't see something when you're in it.
Yeah.
And so I would repeat patterns of chaos and find myself feeling comfortable, when shit hit the fan,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And it's taken me my entire life, up to this point, and I'm still growing to really start to notice those things, and notice when I'm sabotaging things for myself, and you know and to actively change, and be comfortable with peace. And
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, you and comfortable with peace. Like that's a I feel like that's like, I know you said it lightly, but I feel like that's such a heavy statement. And I feel like something that people have a hard time with is like being comfortable with peace and feeling, especially when you're used to chaos.
right,
You're like man, something don't feel right. Like it's almost like you're waiting for something bad to happen.
right. You just like this, like, I could never, for the longest time, you know. So when I first had my kids, so I would wind up having my own substance abuse problem. I would always, I always said that that I would not do drugs, and and I didn't even really smoke pot. I had tried it a couple times as a teenager. I drank a good bit and purposely wouldn't do drugs because I would say, well, my dad died of an overdose.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I joined the military, I had I got pancreatitis in basic training,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up in the hospital for about 30 days. And they had put me on. So they took away food and introduced Demerol, a strong painkiller, intravenously,
Yeah.
and told me you can't drink anymore, and sent me home with a bottle of OxyContin. And so I remember thinking at that time I was 19, 20 years old, and I remember thinking that well, who needs to drink? Like I really liked what they were giving me, and again, it was prior to it was right before you know people doctors didn't tell you much about addiction and um, that kind of stuff. It's just when they didn't give me any warning, like, hey,
Yeah.
you might get dependent. And then I had
Yeah.
the genetics, and so I end up with my own substance abuse problem, and then when I got clean, I around 24 years old, 25, I very early into recovery, I had my son. So
Man. And so do you feel like that was a part, would you say that was a part of your recovery, or was that happened after like you had your son?
I had my son early on in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I think his mother was in a halfway house at the time, and she would come to visit, and she got pregnant, and she came home, and I think we had about like 6 months clean, and you know, so he was a recovery baby, and you know, and I had looking back, I think that I think one of the things that happens. So I think one of the things that we should introduce to that I would want anybody listening to this to know is that I also am a mental health professional, right? And so I like to look at things from not only just my life story, but also in a way that like fits uh, this some things that I learned along the way in mental health. But so yeah, he was a recovery baby, and and I started college early on, and I would say that for the first 5 years of my son's life, that I had built that kind of almost like a fairy tale existence for him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I got a really good job right out of grad school. We bought our first home. He was an only child. He was very loved, and we had lots of family and friends around, and just sort of everything that I would have imagined. Like, this is the kind of dad I
Yeah.
want to be, and this is the kind of life I'd like to give my kid. And then, I think when my son was around 5, my daughter's 3 years younger than my son, so we had a second kid, and very early on, I think for around the time my daughter was born, my wife and I, their mother, would be my ex-wife now, started to our our unresolved things from our past
Mm.
crept up, right? And I think that that was the first time as an adult that that I'm having this experience of it's I don't I, I I don't feel comfortable with peace, right? And I don't feel
Mm.
comfortable. You know,
So,
I think I want these things and I fight so hard for them, and then you know,
so, so it sounds like boom, you're on this path of bam, like you're on this path of like I'm breaking the cycle right here. Like I'm already
right?
doing it. Right.
Thought for sure. Like I thought for sure. So there was even a time when my son was young, very young, that my mom was starting to show some signs of substance abuse. She would come over nodding off, and I remember telling my mom early on, "Hey, mom, I didn't get clean, so so people could be nodding off in front of Peyton. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I want a different life for him."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember early on, I read that book. You know, right when he was born, I read that book, Beautiful Boy. It became a movie, and it
Mm.
was about a father dealing with a son who had substance abuse problems. You know, and I would look at my son, and and just, and I couldn't have imagined at the time, you know, ever doing anything that would jeopardize his innocence. You know, it was just everything that was like, I'm gonna give him
Yeah.
something different.
And like and as also you are in a very unique you come from you have a very unique perspective as someone who has experience with substance abuse and from a mental health and as a mental health professional. Like so
Right.
like talk to me about like how what happens is going on in your mind. It's almost like because you like they say like that saying, it's like when you know better, you do better, right? So it's like
Right. Right.
you have all the information, and it's like, but just like you said though, you felt like early on when after you had your son, like you started to notice with your wife, like those old patterns, or your kid's mom, like those old patterns start to creep up or unresolved things. Um,
Right.
like what kind of things are going through your mind as somebody who's a mental health professional and feeling like old patterns are creeping up, and how you manage and deal with those things?
So I think it's I think I think it's not about when it comes to mental health problems and substance abuse, it's not about what you know. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like recovery from those sort of things is, like, I like to say, it's an action sport.
Mm,
You know,
I
and
love
so it's
that.
about what you're doing. And so uh, even though I knew everything, that only sort of that only sort of was useful when I was seeing it in somebody else.
Mm,
You know, it wasn't useful in my applying it to my own life because I had blind spots. You know,
yeah.
I had some unresolved trauma, and I think so. What happened was, the first thing that sort of you know um, came along and threw me off course was that my my kid's mom, my wife at the time, Tara, she started having some postpartum after we had Willow, and one day she was in the shower, and she had a panic attack, like a full blown panic attack. She thought she was having a heart, just out of the blue, and so we took her to the doctor. I think we had been clean for 5 years, and the doctor prescribed her Xanax.
Mm,
And in my head, I was thinking, we've been clean for 5 years, and she's having panic attacks, and this should be okay. So, and she had a relapse that went downhill very quickly.
yeah.
And so for me, I'm back in the chaos. That when that happened, I'm back in the chaos, and I am you know behaviors and emotions and parts of me that help me survive, not live but survive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That are no longer useful when you in your adult life. Those things came back to me, right? And I start, I start making mistakes,
Yeah.
and I was scared because I had, my plan was to give these kids something different, right? And now here I am finding myself in the same position probably my mom was in when, when my sister and me were young. I have a spouse and a co-parent
Yeah.
who's, having a substance abuse problem.
And when so now you're a dad, right? And you're going through all of this. And how did your vision of who you were as a father, how did that affect that?
It, I think I tried my best to portray, the image that I wanted to portray to my children and to people on the outside. And, that the image that I, the father that I wanted to be, I tried to portray that image on the outside, and on the inside, I'm feeling, I'm scared and I'm feeling guilt, and I'm I'm starting to doubt, starting to creep in. Am I capable, right, of being a good father? And in my mind, I'm failing at this thing, right? That I had set out to do to break the family cycle.
Man, I think there's so many fathers who they don't have to have like any substance abuse issues or any type of like what you would consider maybe a major issue or anything like that have those same type of feelings, the same type of feelings of doubt and like, am I doing this thing right? And like of guilt of like that. I'm like, man, whatever my past experiences are, whatever my unresolved trauma is like, and I'm like fucking my kids up, like, like just
Right.
because of my own bullshit.
Right.
I can't, like, can I, and, like, so, like, what would you say to those fathers that are experiencing like that guilt? And like, how do you kind of, even from your perspective or things that you've done, or from a mental health professional standpoint, how do you climb up out of that hole of doubt and guilt of like, damn, am I really doing this shit the right way?
I would say that, it took me a long time to not just know in my head, but to internalize that shit ain't doing me no good.
Yeah.
That guilt that I'm feeling is not helpful, and that, I I can't change the past, and I know that those are sort of cliche things, but really, I just got to try to be the best father I can be on a daily basis, right? And I think that, it's kind of a fine line you walk from being like, from holding yourself accountable, you know, and realizing that, your fingerprints are on your kids for the rest of, like the things you do are going to affect them, and you know you can't always control the outcome of things, right? And I've learned that the kids are more resilient than possibly that you think they are.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really good points, man. To like one, like you mentioned three things that I thought, really good points that I think all fathers need to take with them. Like one is like just do the best you can each day.
Right.
Just start
Every
there.
day.
Like not trying to think about like projecting into the future so much. Like, just like start with today and just be the best that you can today. And like take it one day at a time. Even though I still like some cliche shit, like still take it one day at a time, right?
Right.
And the second thing you said was like, we don't get to control the outcome. All right,
Right.
like we don't get to control the outcome. Do the best you can, and you're gonna get the best possible outcome you can get if you're doing the best you can every day.
Right.
You don't control it, and then there's one more thing you said that I really love, and that I don't know, maybe they come to me, but it escapes me, man. But like, just that fathers need to take those things with them, man. And I don't know.
It is so, being a dad is such a man, it's really, it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my. It's the most important thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And it's just something that's always with me, and
Yeah,
always weighing on me, right? And and so you got to learn to get like to if you've had it, unless you're a perfect father. I think some dads are just really good dads, and I'm not sure, you know, but you know, I think we have to learn to give ourselves a break, man.
yeah,
Like, honestly. And
yeah.
so every day, like I was saying, like every single day, I wake up and I think about something I might be feeling. I'll think about my shortcomings from the day before, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe from years past. But what I got to do is think, well, what do I want to do today
Mm-hmm.
as a good father? Like, what
Yeah.
what are the things that are important today, and and go from there.
So what if I'm a dad, right? Like, if I'm a dad, like I said, even though, okay, we talked about dads that are not struggling with any type of substance abuse, but what about the dads that are, right? What if you're a dad and you're listening to this right now and you're struggling with alcohol abuse, you're struggling with some kind of substance abuse, you're just like kind of like, and you're like in a hole right now and just feeling like, I've heard a lot, man. I'm in different groups on Facebook, like single dad groups on Facebook, and like you'll see, man, and it's often enough where I'll see a dad,
Right,
he'll post something, and he'll like, and it'll say something to the effect of, "I'm done. I can't do this shit no more. Like,
right.
I'm giving up. I can't. Like, it's too much. I feel like a failure. Like, dads are feeling that. A lot of dads are feeling it. And if I'm that dad
I
and I'm
think,
feeling like giving up, where do I start, man?
well, what I think is what I've learned from my own kids, um, from watching. So I've also had my own relapses since that time, that my kids' mom relapsed. And I think I buckled to the uh, you know just didn't have the tools I needed to handle what was going on in my life, I think. And and I've spent a lot of time with my kids. For one, their mom has been using mostly their entire life since that initial 5 years that we had. You know, um, so I've watched them deal with uh, what was going on with her over all these years, and I had my own brief relapse for about a year and a half, and I've been clean now. But I had stayed clean for about 14 years, and I had a relapse in 2019. Got clean in June 2020, and I've been clean now since June 2020, and I've been spending a lot of time with my kids, right? Um, and so I talk a lot to them about their feelings of this kind of thing. And what I know is that they don't care uh, about the past per se. I mean, they just want you to get clean and do good. Like when I talk to them about their mom, like when I talk to their mom, one of the things she's always saying is how good how I've gone too far, Rob, to come back. She feels guilty, and she feels like she's went too far, and she feels embarrassed, and like she has all of these roadblocks in her way from bringing her back to being a mother. And to be honest with you, she's a damn good mother when she is when she is clean. Like she is. And when I talk to my kids about it, they're just like, I just want mom to get clean. Like, I want, and so if if a father was listening, if a father was struggling with substance abuse, what's important to know is that in your kid's eyes, you've never really gone too far.
Yeah.
And the you get clean and you come home and you be a parent, and
Yeah.
your kids are going to love you.
Yeah. Like yeah. You just reminded me of the third thing that I wanted to say that you said earlier, that kids are resilient, right? Like that kids are resilient, and I can relate to that thought process of like your kids just want you, like you had, if you've thought you've gone too far and there's no coming back, like I don't know, some guys have done some parents have done some really egregious things and like maybe to their kids. But if you're just like a dad that's been absent and you got some shit you're struggling with, and you had some substance abuse or whatever, and you've been absent from your kids' lives, dude, you can come back from that. Like,
Right. When I was listening to your podcast with you talking to your dad, that's what that's what I was thinking, is that I'm not sure when you guys sort of reconciled or whatever, and you had your resentments, but I think that you have a relationship with them today, right? And so even though you'll have some things to overcome, right? Like you can come back. And the other thing I was thinking is that when we started, I had said that I my goal was to, we talked about breaking the cycle, right? I was going to be the guy that broke the cycle.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, most particularly recently, when I had my relapse, I was sure that I had screwed that up and not broken the cycle.
Mm.
And what I realize is that that's I can still break the cycle, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
I haven't screwed. Like, I'm still working to do that every day today, because one of the things I'm doing is something that I didn't have. My kids are in counseling.
Mm.
We're addressing it as a family. We're working through this now. You know what I mean? And so I'm doing everything in my power not to send them into adulthood with the trauma that they have experienced being unresolved.
Yeah.
And
Man, that's big.
So
that's big.
You
Yeah, kids, don't be afraid. If you listen, don't be afraid to put your kids in counseling if they need, like, they don't have to have gone through some serious traumatic experience to do it either. Like, my son goes to counseling right now, and and I just want him to have someone else to go to talk to. I want him to be able to expand his emotional vocabulary. I want him to just be able to express themselves in healthy ways. Like, just like, so, and one of the things that I think is important to mention too is, I think a lot of dads experience too, if you feel like you've been absent from your kids' lives, a lot of dads, and I think a lot of men you talk about the word shame on them. Like men that experience a tremendous amount of shame for their past behaviors, their past mistakes, not being in their kids' lives. And my dad, I found out when I kind of got reacquainted with him back in the day. This was like during Hurricane Katrina, when I one of the first times I called him on the phone and talked to him about how I felt. He felt a lot of shame. That's one of the reasons why a lot of dads don't come back. Don't come back around. They may want to, but they're ashamed, and they don't feel like you're going to accept them, and they feel like you're going to reject them. And you know what? It may happen at first, right? It may because kids they're pissed off you weren't around, right? But if you get one thing that I do believe in my heart, if you are a father and your kids you've been absent or had some bad experiences, if you come back and give consistent effort, your kids want you in their lives, man. They want you around.
Right. That's what I'm seeing from my kids. And then in my own experience, I never had that. Like, I knew every day that I wasn't doing well, uh, for a year and a half straight. Every day was my last day using. And like there'd be other people around me that'd be like, like we're planning to do this tomorrow. Every day I'm like, I'm not doing this no more. And in my head, it was every day. It was like, I got to get back to my kids. Got to get back to my kids. Got to get back to my kids.
Mm.
Right. And so I knew I was coming back, but reconciling. But prior to my relapse, like my kids only knew me. Like even if someone would have said to them, "Hey, your dad used to party when he was younger" or something, they would have been like, "No." Right. Like they knew me as a college professor, as a somebody that had a private practice. And then all of a sudden, I'm having to redefine who I am to them. And
Mm.
one of the first things I said to them when I got better, I told my son, I'm gonna say, okay, now I'm gonna show you how you get back up. And and so the
Was
guilt and shame, yeah, those things are roadblocks. But
well,
really, what I'm learning from my own kids is that those things don't matter to them.
walk me through that.
They just want.
Uh,
What is it?
you said they just want you to. Were you gonna say something?
They just want you. They just want you to. They just want you to start doing good. Like
Yeah.
they just want you to be there now. That those things don't matter to them. I mean, you know.
Um. Yeah, man. Can you walk me through that process a little bit about what it was like for you to, like you said, to kind of redefine yourself to your kids? Like, what did
I
that
mean,
feel
I'm
like,
still.
man?
I mean, I'm still in the process because my kids saw me, I think, as someone different, and now they're knowing a new side of me. And to be honest with you, I feel closer
Yeah.
to my kids now than I ever did because I did have a side that needed healed,
Mm.
and I was so afraid for my kids to see that, to know it.
Mm.
And so for one it kept me sick. It's
Mm.
probably why I relapsed, right? Like because I wasn't able to live, to to be my authentic self, I think. And for two, it kept me, any kind of, it was a barrier in my relationship
Yeah.
with them because they really didn't know me, right? And so now they do. Now they know that dad uh, is flawed too,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean. And so I think that you know I've had to be uh, careful about defining boundaries because my son he'll want to ask me things like talk to me like a buddy about um, substance use or something that he sees on TV, like, oh, hey, when you tell a personal story or something like that, and I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that, but right, like,
Yeah.
so your dad, right, like, and I really, you said define a process, and I really had to earn their respect back.
Mm.
I had to earn their respect back, and I had to earn their uh, trust back, to for them to feel like, okay, dad's, I know, I'm going to be taken care of. I know that my
Yeah.
appointment's on time. I know that I'm going to, that was a process. And they were angry at first, and I was insecure at first, and but I got through it by knowing that every single day I woke up, no matter how hard it was, I was like, I got to be consistent
Yeah.
today, regardless of how I feel. Like, I got to be a consistent father, and regardless of ways they might be acting out because of maybe something they have been through, you know. Um, so knowing what kind of father I want to be, and consistently being that every day, and you know, and starting to see them heal, like seeing my son just feel comfortable and laugh and interact with the family and be happy again, it took a while, and we got there, but
Yeah, man. So it sounds like you're saying even though that kind of relapse was shitty, that you were able to see some silver lining and some value in that process.
I learned about those patterns that we talked about, those that being attracted to chaos. I mean, because I think that, for a long time, even though certain relationships in my life were, I would have considered them really important, like, if I look back, I can see a pattern of sabotaging those relationships. And so, and I saw that, and like I see that now. And so now every day, like I know that I need to actively be good to the people around me, and appreciate them in a way that's like my actions, not just my heart, that, oh, hey, I care about you, but like, I'm gonna be a good, honest, faithful husband who is whatever, thoughtful, and I'm gonna be a dad who is consistent, and you know what's a role model, what do I want to role model a good, healthy marriage in front of my children, and so yeah. So I did. I was able to recognize patterns, and again define who I didn't want to be. Right.
Yeah. So you talked about recognizing patterns, and you also talked about, you mentioned earlier, like blind spots, right? Like you had some blind spots, and
Right.
and like obviously it's called a blind spot for a reason. So if I'm someone who is trying to get to a better place as a father, as someone who's struggling with mental health, someone who's struggling with addiction or anything like that, how do I recognize my blind spots?
First, I think it's important to acknowledge that you don't have to be struggling with mental health or addiction to have blind spots, right? And I think that as for men, for men, a lot of times our ego is in our way, right? And so the way that you recognize blind spots, man, is that I have to pay attention to the people around me, right? And I have to take their feedback without getting offended, or whatever, and I have to fellowship with other dads, and build relationships with and if I need counseling, right, or something like that, like I got to work on myself actively, like, and for me, like, I just sort of inventory my behavior from the day before or whatever, and I take feedback from the people around me, and I think that a good measuring stick is like, how happy are the people around you, right? Like, and what's my part in that?
That's what I like, that, man. How happy are the people around you, and what role do I play in that? Like,
right. Like, if my wife is whatever, if she's if she seems if she's grouchy, and she's whatever, if the people in my house are, if there's bad moods and feelings in my house, like, that's sort of a measuring stick I can use to say, like, what changes, in open communication, and a willingness to respond to people around me, that without getting angry, or or saying that's
easier said than done, but necessary. I love that. Like, one thing I say, man, often I say in my men's group, man, is that, and I believe this to my core, is that fathers and like men, like, we set the tone. Like we can, like, the house can be, everybody in the house can be in a shitty mood, and a dad can come in and just change that up with his attitude and his effort. a relationship can be crappy, and if the man takes control of the relationship and decides that this is going to be a good relationship, like, and we're going to be happy together, and we're going to laugh, we're going to have fun, and we're going to communicate, a man can come in and completely set the tone, right?
Right.
Or completely destroy it.
Right. For the longest time, I would say, like, I would take all this pride in saying I'm a good dad, and I was never a good husband, right? And I never, and until now, to this point in my life, put the two together to think you can't really be one if you're not being the other, like, because you're stirring up shit in your home. You're not, you're being a bad role model, you're making the energy in your home shitty. And so, it took me a long time to take responsibility, to say, like, like, I'm not a good, I'm not being, I don't like to use terms good or bad, even though I keep saying that, but I guess I'm not being the father that I want to be if I'm, if I'm not being good to my wife.
Yeah. Or if I'm not being good to, I know a lot of dads who co-parent, if I'm not being good to their mom, right? Like,
Right.
if I'm treating her mom like crap and talking bad to her and talking down to her, and yeah, it's all
Arguing in front of them, like,
yeah, it's all
I'm
goes
guilty of
together,
all
man.
these things, but
Yeah.
those are, those are definitely things in the past, just areas of growth for
Yeah.
me.
So, I'm curious, I have probably 100 questions I could ask you, man. Like, I like to, for the listener's sake, I like to keep these episodes at a decent amount of time, so they're not feeling like we keeping them too long, man. But
Right.
I want to, ask you before we get out of here, what, as you see, the future of yourself, going down, as a father, as a husband, as a man, like, what are the things that you want to add to or continue doing, and what are some of the things that you want to eliminate from your life, as a father, as a man, as a human being, moving forward to being the best version of yourself?
Um, I think that, most importantly, for me is, you know, loving my kids. My kids are teenagers. My son's a teenager now, and my daughter's getting ready. She'll be 12, and they're developing their own. Your relationship different with them in a way. They start to, develop some independence from you and just sort of become their own person. And there's this part of me that, like, wants to control that,
Yeah.
and accepting who they are, where they want to go, and in the spirit of actively loving someone unconditionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, being, you know, uh, providing them guidance needed, or whatever. But that's what, with my son lately, and I'm kind of feeling like, even moving forward. So now, and even like later in his life, just and my daughter too, just practicing this sort of an unconditional love, and hoping that extends to them loving themselves unconditionally. And it's like,
I love
so
that.
things that I would like to eliminate is shame, guilt, you know, those things aren't serving me, right? And
Yeah.
so unconditionally loving myself, right? And so I'm capable of loving them unconditionally.
Yeah. I think that's powerful. Yeah. And I like you said, you're already breaking the cycle. And even just by actively just making, like you said, just trying to be the best dad you can be every day. Like,
Right. So breaking the cycle or whatever, there is no you're never finished, right? There's not an
yeah,
ending point. It's something that you're doing every day.
yeah,
And so I've never failed at that. And and it's something that I have to accomplish every single
yeah.
every single
Like,
day on a daily basis.
and I think that's important for people to understand, man. They can take that from you as you haven't failed. If you're still here, if you still got breath in your body, like you haven't failed. Failed is you're finished. Failed is it's over. Like you may have times where you feel like I'm failing, but you can turn that shit around.
Right. Yep.
Because it's not over. And I love you, man. I love your story. I love that the father that you are and that you're gonna continue to become, and that you're being for your kids. And
Yeah, man. Thank you. I love you too. Like maybe we'll come back in a year or so and see where we're at. Right? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like on the show.
we're gonna do an update, man. We're gonna, maybe season 3 or something. I want to keep this thing going. So for anybody that's listening, man, I'm so grateful for the listeners and support that I've received with this podcast, for the guests that come on, you coming and being vulnerable and transparent about your story and about your life, man. And I'm so grateful to have you as a friend and to have this conversation with you and to share it. And I know it's going to benefit people. It's going to help some lives, man. And I commend you for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you for having me.
You got any final words for the listeners before we hop off here?
I guess just be the best father that you can be.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, every day. Don't compare yourself to the guy next door or some guy that's posting pictures of him with his kids on trips all the time or some shit like that. Just be the best dad you can be, and your kids are gonna love you. And it's not about comparing yourself to anybody else. I love that. But this has been another episode of The Molds That Make Fatherhood. Thank you for listening, and we will see you all on the next episode.